3 and 2 and 1. Almost there. We are almost ready. Redirecting. Everyone, all the Zoomers, sit tight. Sit tight, and we should be live. And we are now live on Facebook. I'm gonna go ahead and get us back to our regularly scheduled programming, and we are recording and we are live. And I'm gonna pull up my script here, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get started. I'm so excited to be here and joining everyone today, everyone from Zoom and everyone from our live Facebook feed with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. My name is Alice Christman, and I am the Senior Manager of Marketing and Community Engagement at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And I am broadcasting live from my deluxe apartment in the Annapolis sky to help you learn how clean water grows on trees. But first, I want you guys to know something. There's something I love to do in the summer. There is no greater joy to me than getting a great book, laying out under the shade of a huge tree with a cold beverage and just enjoying the afternoon. But little did you know, or what I found out from my friends that are joining us today, is that trees bring tremendous more value than to my leisure time. So we have two great speakers joining us today. We have Harry Campbell and we have Brenda Seiglitz from our Pennsylvania office. But before we get started, I do want you to know we are taking questions. We will take questions in the Facebook comments below and also in the Zoom chat. My faithful assistant, Ashley Animal. Ashley, if you could go ahead and wave up in the corner. She is going to be taking questions and we'll address them at the end of our show today. But first, to get us started, we are going to be hearing from Harry Campbell. Harry is the Pennsylvania Science and Advocacy Director for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. He is responsible for building the science-based initiatives that feed into our advocacy goal in Pennsylvania. In brief, his job is awesome. He makes sure that the things that we ask you to do in Pennsylvania and beyond are backed by the best scientific data available. And I couldn't think of a better way to count progress than by counting trees. So Harry is going to take us through some great lessons on the value of trees. And then we'll hear from Brenda in her backyard. Brenda, go ahead and wave. Yay! And her faithful assistant, who will be joining us in her backyard as well. And she will be talking about native trees and how you can help from anywhere in the watershed. With that being said, let's get started with Harry. Harry, take it away.
Well, thanks, Alice, and good afternoon, everyone. I thank you for taking the time today to learn a little bit about trees and some really exciting initiatives that we have ongoing in the state of Pennsylvania and throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And I'd like to start off with just sort of a question. Basically, a question to all of you. What if I told you that there was a practice, a thing, a very measurable, tangible, relatable thing that could do so many wonderful things for you and I? Whether it be the tackling of the impacts of climate change that are happening and impacting us and our communities locally, regionally, and even globally. But at the same time, a practice that could help restore agricultural fields and soils, and even improve herd health and stream conditions within these areas. Or even help ameliorate the impacts of over-fertilization of our lawns and agricultural fields with fertilizers and manure. And simultaneously, while doing all of that, reduce the impacts of stormwater runoff to our rivers and streams and into our systems within our communities. And at the very same time, not only help save the Bay, but also Pennsylvania and its rivers and streams. So what if I just happened to tell you that it's trees? That trees are a VIP, a very important plant. Trees do many wonderful things for us. They eat carbon dioxide. We've heard about climate change. We all know what carbon dioxide does to the atmosphere. Well, trees are this tool, the magic tool that nature has provided us to take carbon dioxide, suck it into its body, into its leaf material, and what it releases at the same time is oxygen that you and I breathe. An average mature tree on an annual basis actually can absorb as much CO2 as driving 26,000 miles a year. That's about the average, or well over the average mileage for an average American sedan. It also produces oxygen that is actually worth and generated and estimated to be worth almost $32,000 a year. That's the oxygen that you breathe, that I breathe, our families breathe, as well as all the critters and wildlife that live in our trees and in our communities and in our forests throughout the Bay watershed. Those trees are providing clean, fresh oxygen to our critters and ourselves. They also do a whole myriad of other things, including just helping to ameliorate what we call the heat island effect. We all know what it feels like to be standing in a concrete island in the summers with the heat beating down on us, and it gets much more hotter than, say, under a forest canopy. Well, we can recreate those forest canopies right in our own backyard, or in this case, in our front yards. And in fact, these street trees can actually reduce the amount of air conditioning costs, research has indicated, by 20 to 50%. And that not only helps address the issues associated with heat island impacts, the health issues, the air quality issues, the water quality issues as well, but it also lightens our pocketbook and lessens the load on our pocketbook at the end of the month when we have to pay those bills. Trees also are actually fundamentally important to actually preserving and restoring the condition of our drinking water. The majority of Pennsylvanians, where I happen to be, get their drinking water sources from freshwater sources like surface waters, lakes, reservoirs, streams, even one just down the road from me. And in fact, the research indicates that for every 10% increase in tree canopy within a watershed that is serving a population, drinking water treatment costs can actually be reduced by 20%. The US EPA estimates that when we invest in things like tree plantings alongside streams, streets, and other high priority areas, we actually save $27 in treatment costs for every dollar we spend planting trees and other best management practices. How do they do it? Well, it's all in the roots. It's all in the body. It's all in the structure of the tree, the leaf material, the roots, the structures that actually are part of those systems actually help not only retain soils, retain nutrients, retain carbon, they also help filter out all the pollutants that are in our rain runoff and other areas as well. And in fact, a mature tree can actually absorb 4,000 gallons of stormwater, or what would become stormwater, each and every year. And that means it's going into the soils, it's going into the roots, it's going into the atmosphere in some cases through evapotranspiration. And we see that actually research indicates that compared to, say, some farm fields and construction sites, these forest areas that we plant trees have the ability to infiltrate into the ground 15 to 40 times more precipitation than, say, the average lawn that Americans and Pennsylvanians have. And then finally, they're actually critically important as forested riparian buffers. They actually, through a really magical scientific approach, actually are able to reduce through the pollutants that get into our rivers and streams by the physical, biological, and chemical abilities to absorb what's coming off of the land and keeping it there where it does good, as opposed to getting into the streams. And recent research in Pennsylvania has indicated that 1 acre of a forested riparian buffer actually provides over $10,000 a year per acre in natural benefits each and every year. Quite frankly, it's the most cost-effective practice known to science in terms of preserving and restoring the health and condition of our rivers and streams right here in the Mid-Atlantic and in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. But amazingly, trees alongside streams do something else. They actually allow and absorb the stream to clean itself. The stream can cleanse itself of any other type of pollutants that get into it. So that's just so happened to get in there, either from upstream or alongside the stream buffer itself. In fact, research indicates that it's up to 2 to 8 times greater ability of that stream to process pollutants than a stream that doesn't have a forested riparian buffer. And why? It's because of the life, like this brook trout that happens to be in this photograph here. That woody debris, decaying leaves, organic matter, supports a biological diversity and abundance and productivity in streams that is not seen in streams that do not have a forested riparian buffer. And as a result, that life is on steroids, and it's able to degrade and absorb pollutants that get into our rivers and streams. right here in the backyard, including the three villains of water quality: nitro, nitrogen, his cohort in crime, the professor of phosphorus, and oh yes, Dr. Dirt. These three are the major pollutants that are affecting the rivers and streams, not only in Pennsylvania, but in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. In fact, the over 36,000 miles of rivers and streams that are identified as being impaired in Pennsylvania are largely influenced by these nutrients and sediments impacting the life within the stream. And so it was with all that in mind and those ideas in mind that we launched just a few short years ago the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership, an endeavor to partner, serve, and inspire working with throughout the watershed on improving our rivers and streams, so focusing on the streams and the forested riparian buffers, as well as planting street side trees within our urban and suburban communities, and focusing in on other high priority areas like abandoned mine lands reclamation, of which we have significant amounts in Pennsylvania. Planting trees with the right places, in the right partnerships, and in the right places. In fact, we've planted over 200,000 directly, roughly 200,000 directly right now over the last several years ourselves. Our partners have done a heck of a lot more as well. But with all of this in mind, it's simply why we like to say that clean water grows on trees.
All right. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, thank you. If you don't mind hitting unshare on your screen, Harry really gave us this great overview on the big forest of the trees. And now we are going to switch. I think we're still seeing your screen, Harry. So if you don't mind hitting unshare, it's very relaxing, actually. Very soothing screensaver you have there that we're seeing.
I'm having trouble with this stuff.
It's okay. It's okay. We've got some time here. But we're gonna. This gives me some time to set us up. In a few minutes, we'll get to, once we get off Harry's screen, we'll get to hear from Brenda Seiglitz, who is our program manager for the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. Brenda is a rock star. It is her goal to plant 10 million trees by 2025. And so yeah, we'll get to Brenda soon. Let me see if we've got another. Can you find the
No, unfortunately I don't have that. It's not coming up on any of that.
It's not
those options. No.
Did you try scrolling to the bottom of your screen and seeing if the menu would come up?
Yep.
Running your mouse to the bottom.
Yep.
All right, well, maybe if you don't mind, I think the next best option I could think of is if you exit and then maybe join back in on the link we had originally.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, Harry. Great. And we should be able to get to Brenda shortly. Be great. All right. So, where is Brenda? Brenda. There she is. Hi, Brenda. Brenda, like I said, Brenda is our program manager for the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. She is a Pennsylvania master naturalist and collaborates efforts with over 100 partners to plant 10 million trees by 2025. And she's planning to figure out how to do this even while we're all social distancing. She's an award-winning author and has held leadership roles with the National Park Service and the Susquehanna Valley Chamber of Commerce, just to name a few. And she's joined by her husband to help her with her presentation today. Brenda, we are going to put the spotlight on you. So Great. Take it away.
Thanks, Alice, and thanks, Harry. I'm starting us off today by actually holding some native leaves that are in my backyard. You can see these. So every season, what my husband and I do is we have a lot of native trees around our backyard and front yard. So rather than spending hours of time raking, we let the leaves lay. So the reason we do that is because they provide a really great habitat and home and food for all different types of things like critters and salamanders and microorganisms and insects and bugs, anything that you could want living in your yard. The best part about it too is it actually helps contribute nutrient to the soil. So sometimes what we'll do rather than rake is we'll mow it and leaf it and mulch it, so provide some really good nutrients. But part of the reason it works so well for our yard is because they come from native trees. So you'll see here we have a little tulip poplar that we planted. I think it was about 2 years ago. Dave and I planted this one. In fact, we had a chestnut oak here, but unfortunately we planted in the summer, which we don't recommend, and it ended up dying of heat stroke. So now we're nursing this little tulip poplar, which will one day be 190 feet tall, which I think my husband's eyes just got very big because he's kind of shocked that this tree is going to be that big in our backyard. But we want to plant lots of diversity here in our backyard because native trees bring in important pollinators, and those pollinators actually help out all of our agricultural neighbors around here to make sure that they pollinate their crops so we have plenty of food for us to eat. So it's really important not just for biodiversity and wildlife and insects, but also for the crops that we eat. And just like in humanity, diversity is really important in nature. But what you'll notice here is I also have some non-natives, which I'm just going to fess up to it. We planted a lot of non-natives about 10 years ago. And while they're not invasive trees, once I started going through the Master Naturalist course and learning more about trees, I knew we really needed to increase our biodiversity and native plant life in our backyard. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. So I actually went ahead and ordered 5 trees, which actually you can get right now. So the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is offering 5 trees for $50 donation. And what you do is you get these trees shipped in a container like this from Musser's Nursery. It actually gets drop shipped right to your house, contactless delivery. And we've been keeping these roots in a shaded area, really nice, cool, damp area. We actually hid them in my husband's car, which is the perfect damp space for them. And you don't want to soak them. You just want them to be pretty moist before you plant them. So today, Dave and I will be planting this silky dogwood, but we also have service berries, and we also have, I don't remember the second one, a mulberry tree to plant in our backyard as well. But we're going to show you planting the silky dogwood today. And the reason is we want to create a forest-like atmosphere back here. So we have some larger trees that you can't see, but they're providing shade. We have some large black cherries, some 70-year-old silver maples in our front yard that provide that canopy that you want. But we also need some understory, those smaller trees that help fill in the gaps and create that nice forest floor. And then you also have things that my beagles like to lay on, and she's not dead, she's just sleeping on the ground cover. So these are some ways to turn your backyard into a forest. But one of the things I really recommend is you call 811 before you dig. Part of the reason we're planting so many trees in our backyard is because there's no pipes, there's no wires, nothing to worry about hitting like we would have in our front yard. So it's just being safe. And I also referenced the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service guide on native plants. Alice is going to provide a link in the chat, or actually will provide a link in the chat to that. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the native trees that you can get on our tree package, where to plant them, whether it should be shade or sun or whatnot. But first, I want to introduce my husband, Dave Siglitz. He has agreed to use his lunch hour, since we're both working from home, to plant some trees for me. And it was calling for rain, and he even agreed that if it started raining, he would still plant the tree. That's how much he loves me. So, Dave, we're going to have you plant the silky dogwood. And let me get my instructions here. So we're going to go step by step over exactly what you need to do. So, first Dave is going to do is dig a hole, I can hold on to that, twice as wide and slightly longer than the roots. Now you'll notice this has a really long root. So Dave is going to dig an extra big hole. However, you can lightly trim some of the roots, but we're going to try and keep as much of this intact, and I like putting Dave to work, so we're going to make him dig a nice big hole. So as he's digging that, when we get to the point where we can put this in, we're going to place the seedling in the hole, and then the roots should make sure that they hang straight down when they go into the hole. So as soon as Dave's done, he's hitting the roots from our other trees. You might need to get other tools like this. We have like a root digger. You know, our beagles, unfortunately, they're a little lazy today. Otherwise, they'd be digging this hole for us. All right. Do you want to just show them how they place it in there for now? Oh, I think you did get it big enough. Perfect. All right. So you place it in with the roots going straight in. And then what he'll do is he'll fill that up. I'm going to let him continue to work on that. As he wraps up, we didn't expect that many roots. What can I say? We like our trees. But he's going to add some soil there, and he's going to actually fill that up right to the root color. And then make sure that that's gently patted down. And then when we want to later, we can cover this up with some mulch around 2 to 3 foot diameter, but no more than 2 inches thick. Keep it away from the tree itself. And don't worry, all of these steps, you're going to get a link with your tree package that comes in your email that has another video tutorial from Matt, who works with our Virginia restoration team, to show you exactly how to plant. So don't worry if you didn't get all the steps this time. But one of the things that you can do with the tree package when you get it is plant it in your backyard. You can also opt to have it shipped to someone you love. So if you live in an apartment, you live in the city, you don't have room to plant trees, send it to someone else who lives in the watershed and see if they can plant in their backyard. My neighbor actually joked with me this morning that I'm planting a forest back here. And he's not kidding. It's going to look like that in a few years. All right, so Dave's wrapping up. You see this willow is nice and happy, or his dogwood's nice and happy. Then you're gonna put some type of shelter around it. We're fortunate enough to have a tree shelter here that we use in our restoration, but we don't always have those tree shelters. So sometimes we'll just use chicken wire as well to wrap around it to prevent voles and deer from chewing at our trees, which we don't want to happen. So the different types of trees you can get with this program are black walnut, chestnut oak, eastern white pine, pin oak, red maple, persimmon, red mulberry, red oak, serviceberry, shagbark hickory, silky dogwood, silver maple, sugar maple, if you want to start getting some maple syrup, swamp white oak, white spruce, and white oak. So there's a really nice variety available. You'll get a mix of those species delivered right to your door, and we recommend planting it within 2 days, keeping those roots nice and moist. As Alice said, I'm the Keystone 10 Billion Trees Partnership Manager. If you're someone that owns larger amounts of land, let's say 10 acres, 15 acres, or even an acre in an area with a lot of stormwater drainage, if you own agricultural land with seasonal or permanent waterway running through it, if you're dealing with acid mine drainage or stormwater issues and you live in Pennsylvania, reach out to me. The email is keystonetrees@cbf.org, and you can actually reach out to us and we can talk about doing larger scale plantings where we're planting hundreds to thousands of trees in one spot. And we need residents of Pennsylvania to help us find that land so that we can make sure that we have homes for all 10 million of our trees to plant by 2025. So we're pretty excited. Thanks for hearing my backyard.
Thank you, Brenda. I just can't believe how quickly you did that. I mean, Dave, I'm sorry we can't have you just delivered with all the trees because you were very efficient and making all of that happen. So thank you so much, Brenda, for that. I mean, and you were joking about, building a forest in your backyard, but I think this is such a great deal, especially with Mother's Day coming up. Why give your mom flowers when you can give her a forest? I think that'd be pretty awesome. So we are actually going to look at those beautiful trees. Look at those. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, we're going to shift, see if we have any questions. Ashley, do we have any questions coming through? I know I have one or two myself. So
We don't, Alice, from the audience. So
okay.
What are your questions?
I want to know Brenda, I see that you're wearing a Hellbender Defender t-shirt, and Harry, you're more than welcome to jump in, but can you guys talk a little bit about what that t-shirt means? It's not because your last name is Bender and you work for a law firm or anything like that. I know there's a big reason for that Hellbender shirt. So I will let Harry, can you address the Hellbender Defender for us?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alice. And simple fact of the matter is that the hellbender is this crazy aquatic creature that actually can grow up to 2 feet in length. It's a salamander that lives in the most pristine rivers and streams in Pennsylvania and other parts of the Mid-Atlantic area that is endangered. It's a threatened endangered species that's been losing its habitat, its homes, because of just so happens to be a lack of trees alongside streams in its traditional habitat areas. And a number of years ago, through our education program here at Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Pennsylvania Student Leadership Program and Council actually identified the fact that the state of Pennsylvania doesn't have a state amphibian. And they took the Hellbender under their wing, so to speak, and crafted legislation and went to the legislature and got a prime sponsor, and over the course of a year and a half was able to actually get that passed both through the House and Senate in Pennsylvania and signed by the governor, get this, 1 year ago today.
What? Was that 1 year ago today? Oh
It
my
is the 1 year anniversary.
Oh my gosh. And I will tell you, they are the cutest salamander I've ever seen. They're like 2 feet long and they're kind of flat and they're just, I think they're adorable. So I thought it was very fitting. It's a great, great story. And we'll make sure to include some links to share with some folks later too. Thank you for sharing that. And trees are important to keeping those salamanders going because trees help clean the streams to keep them nice and clean for everybody. I know we have another question that just came through. Ashley, what have we got here?
Yep. Ross and Ashley would like to know more about the importance of planting native trees.
Sure.
Brenda, take it away.
Absolutely. So I talked early on about biodiversity. So having native trees is really important because our animals, our crops, everything rely on that native tree species. So species like this tulip poplar here were original in the Pennsylvania landscape. And all the trees that we're offering are native to the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So when these leaves fall, they provide vital shelter, food, habitat for all different kinds of creatures. Not to mention that having native trees help clean our water. So it helps keep other trees alive, keep invasives out. They're less likely to be impacted by disease and other harmful insects that might be coming their way. And we like to see, not just one species like a monoculture, we like to see lots of different ones. It really adds to the beauty and the habitat. Harry, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. One of the important things that you saw in my presentation was about how the things that live in a stream that has a forest riparian buffer are on steroids in terms of the sheer abundance and diversity of life. Hellbenders, brook trout, even the little bugs in the stream called the macroinvertebrates in the microbiological community is enhanced when they're there. And native trees are critically important to that because it just so happens to be that those critters that live in those streams have adapted over thousands of years to the types of trees that are native to Pennsylvania. And non-native trees, even though they may deposit their leaves and other material into the stream, those bugs, those trout, those hellbenders can't use it. And so the native trees are the things that they use as a food source, as a habitat source, as a source of energy, frankly. And so it's critically important that we plant native trees and native shrubs too, alongside our rivers and streams and throughout Pennsylvania, as opposed to non-native.
I think we have one more question that came through. Ashley, do we have another question that came through?
Yeah, so you guys had mentioned calling 811 before digging, but Bill is wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the proper place to plant trees, like which trees to plant in the right kinds of places.
Sure. So I mentioned the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has a really great reference guide from the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And what it'll do is it'll list every single tree that's compatible and native to the Chesapeake Bay watershed, where to plant it, whether it needs sunlight, whether it needs more shade, whether the soil, whatever soil you have, if it's more acidic or less acidic. That's a really great reference guide. And certainly if you have any questions about the specific tree you're looking to plant, email us. We have awesome restoration staff across the watershed that can help you out with figuring out where to place your trees.
All right. We're almost, I was going to make that the last question, but I knew this would happen because you're wearing the Hellbender T-shirt, Brenda. Now people are asking, we had a question about the Hellbender T-shirts. A year ago today, the Hellbender became the state salamander for the Pennsylvania Pennsylvania. And a year ago, like 3 days later, through a lot of hard work, we made that T-shirt available for our audiences to purchase. And 2 weeks later, we sold out. So we do not currently have that on the store. We do have a lot of other great Save the Bay products and are looking to replenish some of our inventory. If you are very passionate about having a Hellbender T-shirt, we do listen to our audiences and we can consider adding it to the inventory. I know I haven't had a chance to get one yet. And there's nothing I would love more than to have people ask me, what is a hellbender? And then I'll say, well, let me tell you about my friend Harry Campbell and what he has told me about trees. And before we get started, though, make sure you call 811 so you're not going to be cutting any crazy electrical cords when you plant those trees. So I can't think of a better way for us to start closing off our presentation today. Thank you, Brenda and Harry. I have a few little things to share with everyone before we head out. Wouldn't be the end of a PowerPoint without a quick plug for we've been saying clean water grows on trees. We've been talking about a partnership called the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. This is an amazing resource to learn about how we are planting trees throughout Pennsylvania, 10milliontrees.org. But it's also a great place just to learn about the value of trees in general. Brenda, our tree planting star, and her husband were demonstrated in 10 minutes or less how you can plant a tree in your backyard. And we have a great promotion going on through the end of April where you can get 5 tree seedlings for $50. These are native to the Chesapeake Bay. So we are shipping to Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, parts of Delaware, parts of West Virginia, and parts of New York. We want to keep it in the watershed. And like I said, this is a great Mother's Day gift. If you can't see your mom this year, grow her a forest. Next year, you'll have some tall trees. Great way to build and share a legacy. These are flying off the shelf, so you've got to get on this. I feel like I'm working for QVC. I swear to God, I don't. And the deal ends at the end of next month. These are some other great ways to give as well. If you already have some trees, feel like supporting us, you can go to cbf.org/give. And please make sure you share and tag any photos you have outside on the watershed at our different social media outlets. And finally, I'm going to leave everyone with this little moment of Zen. This is a picture that was taken at our headquarters about a year ago. This is provided by Heather McMonigal, who works in our development office. And I'm going to provide a quick quote from one of my favorite books, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, also provided by Heather. Everything is made out of magic, leaves and trees, flowers and birds, badgers and foxes and squirrels and people. So it must be all around us. Magic in this garden, in all the places. Thank you, Harry and Brenda. Thank you, our audiences in Facebook, Zoom, and beyond for joining us to learn more about how to grow clean water on trees. Thank you.